Aloha and welcome to Thumbing Through Yesterday, the podcast where we take our favorite books from the shelf, dust them off, and remind ourselves why it is we love them so. My name's Tom Galley, and joining me today is Tony Pasculi.
Thanks, Tom. Happy to be here in 2024.
2024, that's right. It's the new year. You're listening to this in April, but it's New Year's we're recording it. So what are we doing this time?
Today we are doing John Scalzi's first novel, Agent to the Stars, a book that is often overlooked because it doesn't fit into his usual shtick. And I think it's his best book, and it's certainly my favorite of everything he's written.
Okay, well, classic question. Why is this one of your favorite books?
Oh man, why is it? I'm a huge Scalzi fan. I think we've talked about Scalzi on the show before. Have we?
Yeah, we did.
Did we do
the Kaiju Society?
No, we didn't.
No, we didn't.
We haven't talked about Scalzi on the show before. Scalzi is, I would have said until recently, one of my favorite living authors. I think he's, sorry, John, if you're listening, petered off lately. But Old Man's War, first Scalzi book I read, phenomenal, really just grabbed me. Second book, and that's the whole first four of those were just unbelievable science fiction. But somewhere in there, I was looking for everything else he wrote and found Agent to the Stars. And this is his first novel. And in a lot of ways, I think it is his best. It avoids some of the lazy tropes that he tends to fall into as a writer. Not all of them, but a lot of them. It's structurally, I think, really solid. And man, it's just what a spin on a first contact story. So yeah,
there is that. This was a lot of fun. This was not one I had read before. I've read a few Scalzi. I think my introduction to him was Red Shirts.
Right.
And then I read Kaiju Society,
yes.
Kaiju Preservation Society. And then I read one that you actually kind of cautioned me about, which was the...
Starter Villain?
Starter Villain, yeah. And I see what you were talking about. The story in that is it's sacrificed in favor of the witty banter.
Yes. Which
I'm guessing that's the direction you're not approving that he's evolved into.
I'm going to caveat this a lot because he wrote that during the pandemic. He was under contract for another book. Actually, no, Kaiju he was supposed to write something else, and he couldn't focus during the pandemic. And then he got the idea for Kaiju Preservation Society and knocked it out in 2 weeks to meet his deadline. And so even though I was underwhelmed with that particular book, I'm like, well, damn, John, that's all right. Yeah. Appreciate something to read, and good for you for knocking. I didn't write anything during the pandemic. And I think there was something similar going on here where he's just like, I just gotta do a contractual obligation type thing. I don't know. I really enjoyed Kaiju, and I thought that would have been a good follow-up to the Gaia series, actually. For the podcast, you mean?
Yeah, for the
not
podcast,
by Varley.
Yeah.
Varley wouldn't touch that.
No, of course not. All right, so background to this is first. It's hard to look at this and think of it as a first novel. It really is well constructed. It's a good story. I've got a huge screaming problem with one of his fundamental premises, but it's a solid book with solid characters and a lovely story arc that goes, like you said, in unexpected directions, or maybe not so unexpected.
I found it unexpected. Yeah. I mean, towards the end. Well, we'll get to the end when we get to the end. So, what was the big glaring issue you had with it?
Well, the big glaring issue takes us straight to the end of the book.
Okay. Well,
so if we want to circle back around to that, we can.
Let's talk about the beginning of the book. So it's called Agent to the Stars, and that's a little bit of a creaky pun, in that our protagonist, whose name I don't remember, is an agent to Hollywood movie stars, and gets tasked with his boss of introducing an intelligent blob of goo, representative of an alien race, to humanity. He is an agent to a starfaring race now. He has to figure out a strategy for making this bucket of protoplasm appealing to human beings. Yeah. So that's our premise.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And Scalzi has some fun playing with how difficult this is going to be, right? When our hero walks into the meeting room, his boss is sitting at a table with an empty aquarium.
Yes.
Well, it's got water in it, or cloudy water in it, but nothing in it. And then not only does it end up being a ball of goo that sprouts tentacles, it stinks.
Yes.
It communicates, and this is actually a problem I've had with other books. It communicates by smell. And that bothers. I just don't see pheromones distributed on the breeze as in any way effective method of abstract thought and higher level communication. Not that sound is such a great system, but the modulation of the details, the vagaries of the atmosphere, and particularly when you get several of them in a conversation, the overlapping residue, it just seems completely and utterly ineffective to me.
Well,
and it's not
that's
the
an
first
issue
book
with-
I've read of it and had that thought.
Sound-based communication has that problem also. As
does.
anyone who's ever been to a party has experienced directly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although it doesn't. I found it funny. There's the chapter when they're on the spaceship and they have a meeting of the entire crew, and then later, Joshua is debriefing the humans, and he said, "Yeah, we had to stop several times to clear the air." I was like, "Okay, he's been waiting half a book to make that pun, But it would be literal, right? You literally would have to. You couldn't communicate anymore.
I didn't have a problem with that so much, although it's worth noting that's a theme that Scalzi returns to in one of his other books, scent-based communication in The Android's Dream, which is, and actually it's my least favorite part of that book. That book is well worth reading. It's really fun. It's a one-off, dense, complex plot. But the opening chapter is just so ridiculous because somebody gets a special device installed in their anus so they can fart insults to a member of a trade delegation who's known to have a short temper and thereby cause an international incident.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds very Douglas Adams almost.
I can just tell that Scalzi had just the most fun ever writing this chapter, and it's just like almost turned me off the book entirely. But everything past that is wonderful, so don't let it put you off.
Now our aliens are transparent, but some parts of the story I felt were transparent as well.
Okay.
I thought it was obvious when he disappeared with the dog what was going to happen.
Interesting.
And from the moment that the actress, Michelle, I think is her name.
Something like that, yeah, Michelle, yeah.
The moment she slips in the coma, the moment I saw the word coma, I knew where that was going. And actually, this is the beginning of my screaming huge problem.
Okay. So the actress that the very, very bankable star that our agent represents, who's sort of I don't want to be insulting and name a real actor to compare her to, but let's say someone who gets cast because they look good in a bikini, happens to land a breakout role in a movie that does $100 million at the box office, and now she's very, very bankable. But she wants to play a serious role. She wants to play someone who's doing a Holocaust memoir, basically, even though she's not Jewish, not right for the part in any way, but she wants to be taken seriously. Yeah. And then she has an accident of some sort and slips into a coma, and then...
Yeah, then there's some debate about the ethicality of what they're doing.
Yes.
But the aliens have the ability to merge with people's brains, to read their thoughts, to learn their experiences. And although it is their highest of social taboos and ethical taboos, they actually have the ability to, what we would say, possess people.
Yeah.
And now what I loved is that, our hero, we should really figure out what his name is, proposes this. He says, look, you took over the dog. Why don't you take over Michelle? And then that gives us a point in which you can interact directly with humanity. And the alien's like, absolutely not. There's like 4 things that I'm opposed to here, and it's not going to happen. So here's the thing. If you've ever seen or read any sci-fi that in any way, shape, or form has a shapeshifter involved in it, the biggest terror to humanity is that they can emulate humans.
Yes.
That they can move in, they can take over the government. There is nothing scarier about a shapeshifter than the ability for it to replace a person. And they go out and they do this so well that the shapeshifter wins the Oscar for Best Actress. And then on stage transforms. Under no circumstances would humanity rise up and applaud this.
No.
There would have been screaming and fleeing and terror and riots and nuclear missiles. I mean, Scalzi has not lived in the human race long enough to understand how this works. I'm sorry, it can't unfold that way.
I tend to agree with you, and that's something that really stuck out to me on this. I've read this book 4 or 5 times, and the first few times I was just so caught up in the story that I'm just like, whoa, this is awesome. And this time, and I think when I reread stuff for the podcast, I'm always kind of thinking in the back of my mind, what is Tom going to think of this?
I will deny that I do the same thing. What is Tony going to say about that part?
And yeah, that just seemed really not credible at all.
Yep.
Now, in Scalzi's defense here, no other alien is ever going to do this. This is only, a way to smuggle in one alien. All the other ones, now that we know they exist, are just going to remain as blobs of goo. So that's not a threat, and it's against their, ethics.
Right.
To an
These are
extreme
nice,
degree.
strong, rational arguments, which of course
Yes.
is what's going to win humanity as a mass over.
Yeah,
nice,
no,
strong,
no,
rational
yeah.
arguments.
Point taken.
Yeah,
Yes.
and it's, and you have to let it go, right? You can't enjoy the book and hang on to
Yes.
that. But if I ever meet Scalzi at a cocktail party, this will be, actually, I wouldn't dream. I'd spend too much time gushing to get around to saying, but.
Yeah, that would be rude.
Everyone's a critic,
Let me
right?
tell you the big problem I have with your first novel. Okay.
That's exactly what he wants to hear from a
Let me
fan.
just get another drink first.
Yeah.
Yeah, never see him again.
But letting go of that, there were so many things that were just delightful in this.
Yeah.
And not least of which was, when Joshua takes over the dog and becomes the dog,
Yes.
there are just so many fun moments in that. And I think Scalzi does a really good job of evolving Joshua and seeing how he actually, as from his birth, he was a unique birth, actually combining human experiences with the entire crew's experience of a ship. And then, he takes over the dog. He understands so much more and he embraces it. It's not just that, he has the intellectual access to it.
Yeah.
This isn't data picking up new memories. He's lived the life, experienced the experiences.
Yeah, you mentioned the ethical concern and how there's kind of a we know exactly where the story is going once Michelle slips into a coma, and then the denouement is dragged out by this sort of extended ethical debate. And I know the first time I read this book, I was like, "Oh my God, we know we just get to the point." But I think that ethical debate is important. I think it's certainly important for him as an author and as part of the justification in his mind of why this is acceptable for this person to get up on stage and claim an Academy Award. But also, I think it's really it's significant in how are we going to act, how are we going to interact with aliens, and if we do not have this ethical debate, then you're not going to have a good framework for that relationship.
Yep.
You have to spend time there. I think Orson Scott Card does similar things in Ender's Game and Speaker for the Dead. Spending a lot of time on the ethics of the situation. So it's not as fun as the rest of the book, but I think it's significant. And one of the things that makes it, this book is often dismissed as lightweight, and I don't think it is. And in fact, in terms of the ethics of First Contact, I think it's way up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I thought, and again, when the agent comes up with this idea, right, and Joshua just shoots him down, turns him down flat.
Yeah.
No, we won't do it. He wheedles and wheedles and wheedles until they get to go up to the ship and talk to the captain.
Yeah.
And then the captain's like, "Yeah, this is a bad idea, but you know what? We'll bring it up with the crew." And at this point, they're not even saying take over her. They're saying, I want you to take a human into her memories so that we can evaluate whether or not she committed suicide.
Yes.
Right? What was her state of mind before she died, which will allow us to engage the next ethical hurdle of whether or not we'll even attempt the possession. Right?
Yeah,
I'm using the word possession, which is very charged. I should use a different word there. They talk about it and they scream about it and they yell about it. Well, they stink about it. And it turns out the entire crew votes against it. Do not do this thing. The only vote in favor of it is the captain. And it's not that the captain thinks it's the right thing to do. It's that the captain thinks we are alien and perhaps these humans know whereof they speak. So we'll take a look.
Yeah.
I think we should take a look. One vote out of however many thousand are on the ship, right?
Yeah.
But they kowtow to that. They allow the exploration to go. And then if we find out that Michelle, in her last moments, was not suicidal, which allows them to open the second round of debate as to whether or not they're going to allow Joshua to infiltrate her.
Yeah. So Michelle, getting back to Michelle, she's one of the other reasons I love this book. Scalzi is terrific, especially in his earlier works. I think this is something that we lose with the later, glibber books like Kaiju and Starter Villain. But he's remarkable at empathy for characters. People you would ordinarily dismiss, like in the hands of any other writer, Michelle would be a complete write-off character. She's the comic relief. She's the Hollywood bimbo. It's like, ha, 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 look at who I have to deal with. And he elevates her to a person of incredible significance, someone who's really legitimately striving for greatness, who is not capable of getting to that point on her own, but she's not completely blind to that fact. And she doesn't let it stop her. And there's something very noble about her, even though she is absolutely wrong for this role.
Yep.
And the fact that the combination of her with Joshua makes this powerhouse combination. Well, and the dog, whose name I forget.
We're not doing good on names today.
It's the three of them that win the Academy Award at the end: an alien, a dog, and a B-list movie actor.
And it's our hero's grand aunt.
Oh yes,
who escaped from the Nazis as a little girl, and she allows Joshua to share her memories, and they kick. I want to call him Bob. They kick our hero out of the room while this happens, and he's out of there for hours.
Yeah,
as Joshua explores the memories, and when he comes back, when he walks out, and at this point he is Michelle.
Yeah,
but he's shaken, and all he says is, "Your grandaunt is an amazing woman. You should remember that."
Yeah. Yeah, that's an amazing sequence in the book. And oh my God, it's got so much emotional resonance. It hits so hard for a book with a premise that's ridiculous. Yeah. And that's what I love about this book, is that you just go, oh yeah, Agent to the Stars. Ha ha, I get it. Bam. Yeah. Yeah. It's intense.
Yep. But that gives her the powerhouse, the emotional depth that Michelle could never have.
Yes.
Yeah. So 1,000 aliens plus a dog plus a Holocaust survivor escapee.
Yes. Yeah.
Plus Michelle.
Plus Michelle.
Wrapped in the body of Michelle.
Who knows how to hit a mark.
Yeah.
Presumably. Yeah.
I've been flipping through the book on the side here trying to find Tom.
Tom. His name is Tom.
How could I have forgotten that? His name is Tom.
Anyway, so looking at the arc of his career, it is at once remarkable and dismaying how good this book is compared to everything he's written since. Because I don't think he has hit this height. I think he comes close in moments of now I've just forgotten the name of the second novel, Android something, which I just mentioned.
I think Sleep was in there.
Android's Sleep? No,
Dream, maybe?
Android's Dream, yeah, Android's Dream.
That makes me think of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
I think that was deliberate. I'm going to actually look it up. I think he hits moments of that in, The Android's Dream. Moments of that in Old Man's War and each of those subsequent books have just moments of just like, wow, that just came out of nowhere and hit me in the feels. But then... And even Red Shirts, although in Red Shirts, it only happens in the codas. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have this completely ridiculous, fluffy throwaway novel, which probably should be animated at some point. And then it has 3 codas, and those 3 codas he wrote just because his editor said, hey, this is kind of short. He's like, I'll write some stuff to go with it. And those 3 little stories that go with it is where all the emotional heart of that book lie, which is remarkable. But then, yeah, it's just I just see less and less of that as his career continues. So it's a shame.
Well, maybe he'll listen and change his ways.
He's every book he sells better than the last.
Yeah.
So he has no reason to change his ways. He's a working writer. He's not here to cater to me. I'm a little sad about it, but good for him.
Yeah.
He's making this his career. He's maximizing his income and minimizing his effort. So
he did, in his afterword, he did mention that the novel has been revised a few times.
Yes.
Every time it's been re-released or republished, they've gone in and updated cultural references so that it stays contemporary. Although presumably the version that I read now that it's available electronically, that probably won't happen again.
Yeah, I haven't. I've got the first print edition of this, and I don't remember anything different. But then, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it would stand out to me or not. I never read. The reason this qualifies, by the way, so I have this arbitrary cutoff for what counts as yesterday. It's 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And this first came out in 2005 or 2007, I forget. It came out in a very limited edition from Subterranean Press, and then Tor picked it up and did a mass market thing with it. But he actually published it on his website first. So he wrote this as his starter novel. He was a journalist for years, and he said, I wonder if I could write a novel. And so he did, and he just threw it up on his website for free and says, hey, if you like this, send me $1. And he made like $4,000 off it, and then he took it down when it got published elsewhere. So that counts for me.
That counts. That was before your 20-year cutoff. Huh?
Even though I never read the website version, I still think that counts. Yeah. And that's a great story. And actually, related, he did something similar with Old Man's War, which is his... Actually, that was Android's Dream was his 3rd novel. Old Man's War was his 2nd novel. He wrote it. He had no plan for publishing it. He threw it up on his website, said, let's see, we'll make a couple grand off this. He got into a debate with Patrick Nielsen, I want to say, who's the editor of Tor Books at that time. And they said, well, have you written anything? And he says, well, I've got this book on my website. You check, there's a link. And he said, this is amazing. I'm going to buy it. So that's how he made it into the publishing industry, the most indirect way possible.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And the Cinderella story for every wannabe writer out there.
Yeah. I was just drinking a malt in the malt shop, and yeah.
I'm going to come back just for a minute to my screaming thing. So after The Alien has come out, the start of chapter 2 says, on the whole, people took it rather well. The only place that rioted was North Korea. Why would North Korea be watching
North Korea
American entertainment television? Right.
Yeah.
Of all the people to riot, of all the people to panic, the one nation on earth that would not be watching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting, too, because this is obviously a trope that other writers have explored in various ways. And he doesn't really address it. I mean, like, what's the Klaatu Barada Niktu?
The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Day the Earth Stood Still. Yeah, it's like, we come in peace. No, you're a giant robot. Yeah. Or Childhood's End. Have you read Childhood's End by Clark?
Dim and dusty memory.
The big issue, one of the big issues in Childhood's End is this: aliens are sent to uplift humanity or guide their ascendants, and they debate endlessly of how and whether they should reveal themselves to humanity, because they look like literal devils. They have big leathery wings and horns, and yeah. So
that could be fun.
Yeah.
I remember an episode of The Outer Limits way back when this alien being gets sucked to Earth through radio waves, and then, he's hunted and people are trying to destroy him, and then at the end he demonstrates his benevolence by standing in front of them and blowing up the radio tower, and Townspeople look on and smile and nod with understanding.
What?
Yeah.
He's got powers. Kill him. Yeah.
Doesn't even work out well for Superman all the time. You know?
Yeah.
All right. What else you got?
What else I got on this? Other than my highest possible recommendation to read it if you like Scalzi at all, nothing. I love this book though.
This is a good book. I can definitely see going back to this down the road.
Yeah. Even when you know the story, even when you know what the debate is going to be and how it all is going to shake out, just the journey is so excellent that it's well worth taking anyway. So,
well, I mean, knowing the story is part of what a favorite is about. Yeah,
that's a good point. Yes,
this is definitely not a book that I'm going to read and set aside and go, oh, I'm not going back to that. This, you know, I'll keep this one around for sure.
All right, excellent, good. So, what's next?
I think it's been too long since we visited Heinlein.
It's always been too long since we visited Heinlein.
And I want to go back to one of my old favorites from high school days, Starship Troopers.
Looking forward to that.
All right, well, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
See you in 2 weeks.